Commander Jacob Rio stood near the docking bay window, watching the stars beyond Virel Station. It was quiet now. The day's meetings were over. The Concord diplomats had gone back to their ships and the hallways were almost empty. Soon the shuttle back to his cruiser would arrive, and he would leave this strange place behind. Virel Station was old, built before humanity ever discovered faster-than-light travel. It floated between systems, a neutral place where different alien species could meet, trade, and talk. Humans had only recently been invited here. They were still newcomers in the galaxy, still watched closely by others who didn't know whether to trust them. Jacob didn't care much about that. He had served as a soldier during Earth's early space wars, and now he worked as a diplomat. He had seen both violence and peace, and after everything, he still believed humans had something worth showing the stars. As he turned to leave, he heard soft footsteps behind him. "Excuse me," a quiet voice said. Jacob turned around. Standing a few steps away was a tall figure in a long silver robe. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes large and bright like glass. Her hair floated slightly around her head as if pulled by invisible waves. She was Alari, one of the older alien species in the Concord, known for their calm minds and psychic abilities. Jacob had seen Alari before, but they usually ignored humans. They were polite but distant, always watching, never speaking much. This one was different. She stood still, not afraid, but clearly unsure. "Yes?" Jacob asked. She looked at him for a moment, then spoke again. "May I ask you something before you leave?" Her voice was soft, almost too soft to hear, but there was something strange in her tone. Jacob paused. The hallway was empty. "The shuttle wouldn't arrive for another few minutes. Go ahead," he said, curious. The Alari woman stepped closer. Her eyes never left his face. "You are human. Your kind is young, loud, emotional." She said it not as an insult, but as a fact. "But I have been watching. I do not understand something." Jacob nodded slowly. "All right. What don't you understand?" She hesitated. Her hands moved slightly, fingers twitching as if searching for the right words. "Why do humans fight to protect those who are not their own?" Jacob raised an eyebrow. "You mean other species?" She nodded. Jacob thought for a moment. "I guess it's who we are. When we see someone in danger, we want to help, even if they're not human, even if it's risky. We don't always succeed, but we try." "But why?" she asked. "You do not know them. You owe them nothing." Jacob looked at her carefully. "Because we believe some things are worth protecting. Doesn't matter what someone looks like. If they're hurting, we feel it. If we can stop it, we try." The Alari woman was silent for a long time. Jacob studied her face. It was hard to read, but he thought he saw something flicker in her eyes. Emotion. That was rare for her kind. The Alari were known for keeping their feelings hidden. Some even said they trained themselves not to feel at all. But this one, she was different. She looked around, then stepped even closer. "I have felt something," she said quietly, "when I see humans. When I listen to their stories. Their music. I do not know what it is. It makes my chest feel tight. My thoughts become louder. Strange." Jacob's heart beat a little faster. He realized what she was saying. She was feeling something, maybe for the first time. "I think you're describing emotion," he said gently. She nodded slowly. "It is forbidden for Alari to feel too deeply. Long ago it caused great pain among my people, wars, madness, so we let go of emotions. We became quiet, calm, empty." Jacob didn't speak. He let her continue. "But now," she said, "I cannot stop it. It grows stronger. I dream. I imagine. I feel fear, curiosity, hope." She looked up at him. "And I am not the only one. Others like me, young Alari, we are changing. Because of your kind." Jacob took a deep breath. This was bigger than just a conversation. If what she was saying was true, then humanity was doing something the Concord had never expected, changing the minds of an ancient species. "What's your name?" he asked. "Calith," she replied. "Well, Calith, maybe this is something good. Maybe your people need to feel again." She looked uncertain. "The Concord says emotions are dangerous. That humans are dangerous." Jacob smiled. "They always say that until we save them." She tilted her head. "Would your people protect someone like me?" Jacob didn't hesitate. "We already have." Just then the shuttle arrived. The doors opened with a soft hiss. Jacob turned to board, but before he did, Calith spoke once more. "Thank you for answering." He looked back at her, heart beating fast, and gave her a nod. As the doors closed behind him, he realized something. That quiet question, asked by a silent alien, had stirred something inside him too, and he knew this was only the beginning. The stars outside shimmered like frozen fire as Commander Jacob Rios sat in his ship, staring out the window, deep in thought. The shuttle had left Virel Station 15 minutes ago, but his mind was still there, still standing in that quiet hallway with Kalith, the Ilari woman who had asked him a question that wouldn't leave his head. She had spoken with such calm, but her words carried weight. Her kind wasn't supposed to feel anything. They had lived for centuries behind walls of silence and logic, but now something was changing. And somehow it was because of humans. Jacob looked down at the small device in his hand, a secure communicator connected only to Earth Command. He knew he should report what Kalith had said. It was his job, but part of him wasn't ready. Not yet. He leaned back in his seat, closing his eyes, hearing her voice again. Why do humans fight to protect those not of their kind? That question, it echoed inside him like an old song. The pilot's voice broke his thoughts. Commander, we'll reach the cruiser in 5 minutes. Earth Command wants a full report once you're aboard. Jacob opened his eyes and nodded. Understood. But he wasn't sure what kind of report to give. When he arrived on the cruiser, he walked straight to the comms room. The officer on duty saluted and left, giving him privacy. He stood in front of the communication panel, took a deep breath, and opened a secure channel. The screen blinked for a moment, then showed the face of Admiral Lin, one of the top leaders in the human coalition. Commander Rios, she said, her voice clear and sharp. We've been waiting. What's the situation? Jacob stood straight. Mission completed. The Concord has accepted humanity's observer status. No hostilities, no incidents, and the Ilari? She asked. Did they say anything? Jacob paused. He could lie, or he could tell the truth, and risk changing everything. I spoke to one of them, he said finally. Her name is Kalith. She approached me. Admiral Lin raised an eyebrow. That's unusual. What did she want? She asked me a question, Jacob said. Something simple, but the meaning behind it was important. He explained the conversation word for word. He told the Admiral about Kalith's feelings, her dreams, and the other young Ilari who were starting to feel emotions. He spoke about how they were secretly listening to human music, reading human stories, and watching old Earth films. Stories about love, sacrifice, friendship, hope. When he finished, the Admiral didn't speak right away. She looked thoughtful. If what you're saying is true, she said slowly, then humanity has done something no other species in the Concord has done. Yes, ma'am, Jacob said. We've changed something inside them, she nodded. This could be dangerous, Rios. The Concord won't like it. They value control, order, stability. Emotions scare them. I know, Jacob replied. But it's not just about fear. It's about choice. Kalith isn't trying to start a war. She's trying to understand herself. Admiral Lin leaned closer to the screen. Keep your comms open. This conversation isn't leaving this room. We'll watch quietly until we know more. Understood? Understood, Jacob said. The screen went dark. Jacob stayed in the room for a while, his thoughts spinning. Humanity had always been seen as the loud, messy newcomers, the emotional species with too much heart and not enough caution. But maybe that heart was exactly what the galaxy needed. That night, aboard the cruiser, Jacob couldn't sleep. He pulled out his datapad and searched through old records. He found reports of strange behavior among young Ilari, sudden bursts of creativity, private art shows, quiet meetings discussing human philosophy. It was all there, but no one had connected the dots, no one until now. The next morning, a message came through. It was encrypted, unknown source, and unsigned. He opened it carefully. There was only one line of text. We dream now. Because of you. He read it twice, then again. There was no doubt in his mind. The message was from an Ilari. He walked to the window and looked out at the stars. He imagined Kalith standing somewhere in her part of the galaxy, maybe feeling something new again. Fear, wonder, curiosity. Humanity had not planned this. They had not sent armies or weapons. All they had done was be themselves. Open, wild, emotional. And that had started a fire no one could stop. Jacob didn't know what would happen next. Would the Concord fight back? Would the Alari resist change? Would Calith be safe? He had no answers. But he knew one thing for certain. Humanity had lit a spark in the dark. And maybe, just maybe, the stars would burn brighter because of it. 2 weeks had passed since Commander Jacob Rios left Varel Station. Life aboard the cruiser had returned to routine. Meetings, reports, patrols. But his mind often drifted back to Calith and her quiet question. He tried to focus on his duties, but something inside him had changed. He felt like a door had opened, and behind it was something waiting. Something big. Then, late one night, it began. A coded transmission came in from a hidden relay station near the Concord border. It wasn't marked as official, and it had no source name. The message was only 3 seconds long. Just a voice, soft, familiar. "We are ready to speak." Jacob listened to it 3 times before he was sure. The voice was Calith's. He immediately went to the secure terminal and contacted Admiral Lin. "I received a message," he said, "from Calith. She wants to talk." The Admiral was quiet for a moment. "Are you sure it's her?" "I know her voice," Jacob replied. "And she used a private relay. No one else would know that location." Lin leaned back in her chair. "This is dangerous. If the Concord finds out we're in contact with a rogue Alari, it could end our observer status." "She's not a threat," Jacob said. "She's reaching out." The Admiral studied his face. "Very well. But keep it quiet. No records. No signals to Earth. If this leaks, you'll take full responsibility." Jacob nodded. "Understood." The next night he received another message. This time it included coordinates to a small, unmonitored moon near the edge of Concord space. The message ended with a short phrase, "Come alone." The following morning, Jacob took a small scout ship and left the cruiser without telling the rest of the crew why. Officially, he was on a solo inspection. In truth, he was chasing a ghost across the stars. It took 6 hours to reach the moon. It was quiet, gray, and covered in mist. The surface was mostly rock with only one small structure, a simple dome made of metal and glass, hidden inside a narrow valley. He landed his ship nearby and stepped out into the cold air. Calith was waiting outside. She wore the same silver robe as before, but her posture had changed. She stood taller now, her eyes clearer, her face more open. She looked like someone who had stopped hiding. "You came," she said. Jacob nodded. "I said I would." She led him into the dome. Inside, the room was filled with strange lights, soft music, and something unexpected. Color. Bright paintings covered the walls. They were not perfect or professional, but they were full of emotion. Joy, sadness, wonder, hope. "These are your paintings?" Jacob asked, surprised. Calith nodded. "Mine and others. We have been creating, feeling, sharing quietly." He looked around, amazed. It was like walking into the heart of something new. "How many of you are there?" he asked. Calith hesitated, then said, "More than 100. Cross different stations. We call ourselves the Kindled." Jacob raised his eyebrows. "The Kindled." She looked at him with a soft smile. "It means those who carry the fire." He understood. It was more than just art or music. They were changing, burning away the cold silence of their past. And it had started because of humans, but Calith's expression turned serious. "We are not safe. The Concord Council has noticed. They think we are sick, broken. There are talks of correction." Jacob felt a chill. "Correction? They will erase our emotions, return us to silence. They believe feelings are a threat to order." Jacob clenched his jaw. "That's not correction. That's destruction." Calith lowered her head. "We need help, not war. Not weapons. Just protection. A voice, a light." He looked at her, understanding what she meant. The Kindled were not soldiers. They didn't want to fight. They wanted to live. "I'll speak to my people," Jacob said. "There are others who will listen. We can spread your message. Quietly at first. Let others know what's happening." Calith looked up. "Will they care?" He smiled. "Humans care too much. That's our problem and our power." She walked closer, her voice softer now. "I don't know why I feel safe around you. Your mind is loud. Your heart is loud, and yet I do not fear it." Jacob looked at her, and something warm filled his chest. "Because you're human in all the ways that matter." She tilted her head. "I am not human." "No," he said. "But you've started dreaming. That's how it begins." They stood in silence for a moment, surrounded by colors, stars shining faintly through the dome. Then Calith said quietly, "Before you go, may I ask you something again?" Jacob nodded. She looked into his eyes. "Do you believe the heart can win over the mind?" He smiled gently. "It already has." Commander Jacob Rios returned to the cruiser with more than just a mission. He returned carrying something invisible yet heavy, a quiet promise, a growing fire, and the hope of an entire group of people who were not human, but had started to feel like family. He gave no full report. He told no one about the meeting with Calith or the word kindled. Not yet. He needed time. The kindled needed time, but time, as always, was short. Only 4 days later, a conquered warship appeared near one of the smaller stations close to the Ilari borders. Officially, the visit was a routine inspection. Unofficially, it was something else. A quiet search, a test. Whispers spread that Ilari citizens were being questioned. Some had vanished. Some had been sent back to the central homeworld for realignment. Jacob knew what that meant. They were starting the purge. The kindled were not safe anymore, and he couldn't stay silent. That night he called Admiral Lin again. Her face appeared on the screen, sharp and alert. "I have news," Jacob said, "and you won't like it." "Speak," she replied, folding her arms. He told her everything about the kindled, about the dome on the moon, the art, the change, the growing fear, and the Concord's response. When he finished, Lin stayed silent for a long time. Finally, she said, "If we interfere, the Concord will accuse us of corruption, of spreading chaos. It could mean war." "I know," Jacob said, "but if we don't help, the kindled will disappear, one by one." "They're not our people," Lin reminded him. "They're becoming something new," he replied. "And they're becoming that because of us." Admiral Lin leaned back. "What exactly do you want, Rios?" "Not a war. Not a fight," he said. "Just a message. Let the galaxy know. Tell the truth. If we shine a light on what's happening, maybe the Concord will back off." "They don't like attention." Lin nodded slowly. "All right. I'll speak with the council. No promises, but I'll try." The call ended and Jacob sat back in his chair, exhausted. He had done what he could for now, but the galaxy had already begun to change. Unknown to him, across several systems, other Ilari were starting to speak. Young ones, quiet ones, artists, thinkers. They had heard the whispers. They had seen the paintings. Some had even heard old human songs playing in hidden rooms, and slowly their silence cracked. One Ilari wrote a story about a star that cried. Another built a sculpture of 2 hands reaching across a broken wall. A third wrote a melody so full of sorrow and beauty that it made 3 other Ilari weep, and they didn't know why. The kindled were no longer just a small group. They were a movement. And movements don't stay hidden for long, the Concord noticed. Soon, harsh messages were sent to every Ilari colony. Commands to report unusual behavior, orders to erase emotional records. And then came the official message from the Ilari High Council. Return to clarity. It was a warning. On board his cruiser, Jacob received another message, this one not from Calith, but from someone new. An Ilari male. His voice was trembling. "They're coming. They've already taken 3 of us. Calith says we must leave. She wants to speak to you one last time. Please, come quickly." Jacob didn't wait. He ordered a stealth ship and flew alone once again, back to the moon where it all began. As he landed, the sky above was darker than before. Storms forming. Something was wrong. Calith was waiting inside the dome, but this time she was not alone. 9 other Ilari stood with her, all of them looking nervous, but also ready. They carried bags, datapads, artwork. Not soldiers, just people with something to lose. "You came," Calith said, her voice steady. "I always will," Jacob replied. She walked to him, and for a moment her calm expression broke. She looked tired, afraid, but also strong. "They will find us soon," she said. "We cannot stay." "Where will you go?" Jacob asked. "We don't know," she answered. "Somewhere Q. Arit. Somewhere we can think, dream, and not be punished for it." Jacob looked at the others. Young, bright-eyed, brave in their own quiet way. "I'll help you," he said. "I'll hide you." Calith nodded. "But you must also speak. The galaxy needs to hear. We are not a threat. We are only trying to feel." Jacob reached into his jacket and pulled out a recording chip. "I've already started," he said. "This has your message, your voices, your art. I'll send it to every station, every ship, every free world that will listen." Kalith looked at him, eyes shining. "And what will you tell them?" He looked back at her and answered simply, "That the heart is waking up in the stars." Commander Jacob Rios watched the shuttle rise into the sky, carrying Kalith and the 9 other kindled into the stars. The ship was silent, without any markings, designed to leave no trail. Its path was not set. They were heading toward the edge of known space, far from the eyes of the conquered, far from the silence that had once ruled their lives. Jacob stood alone near the edge of the valley, cold wind brushing past his face. His mission had changed. He was no longer just an officer or observer. He had become something else now, perhaps a protector, perhaps a witness to history. He returned to the cruiser that same night. The moment he stepped aboard, he noticed the tension. Officers moved quickly. Screens blinked with red alerts. The atmosphere was no longer quiet, it was ready. Something had happened. Admiral Lin's voice came through the comms. "Commander Rios, report to the briefing room. Now." He didn't waste a second. When he entered the room, high-ranking officers were already present. Admiral Lin stood at the front, her expression unreadable. Without turning to him, she said, "Your message." It spread. Jacob blinked. "What do you mean?" She looked at him now, eyes sharp. "Your transmission about the kindled, their message, their art. It went beyond secure channels. Someone leaked it. It's everywhere now." He felt a mix of panic and hope. "And how are people reacting?" "Mixed," she replied. "Many are supporting them. Protests have started, on Earth, on Mars, even in allied colonies. People are demanding the protection of the kindled. They're calling them the first peaceful revolution of the stars." Jacob let out a breath. That part, at least, was good. "But not everyone is happy," Lin added. "The Concord has accused us of emotional interference. They say we've infected one of their oldest species with human disorder. They've requested an emergency meeting with Earth Council. They're considering sanctions." Jacob stepped forward. "They're not sick. They're evolving. We know that," Lin said. "But to the conquered, emotion is chaos. What do they expect us to do?" he asked. Lin's face turned hard. "They want us to find the kindled and hand them over." The room went quiet. Jacob clenched his fists. "We can't do that." "No," Lin agreed. "We won't, but we have to be careful now. We've entered dangerous ground." Suddenly, a young officer burst into the room, tablet in hand. "Urgent update," she said, breathless. A Concord patrol ship intercepted a civilian freighter near the Kivar belt. They were searching for kindled escapees. When the crew refused inspection, the Concord ship fired. "3 civilians are dead." Gasps filled the room. Jacob felt his stomach twist. "This is getting out of control," someone said. Lin nodded. "They're sending a message. To us, to everyone watching. They will not allow emotion to spread. This is war without war. A shadow fight," Jacob stepped forward. "Then we need to fight back. Not with weapons. With truth. With every story, every voice, every piece of art the kindled left behind." Lin looked at him carefully. "You believe that will be enough?" He nodded. "Yes, because deep down people, no matter the species, want to feel. They're just afraid. But once they see what the kindled are trying to do, they'll understand." Lin looked around the room. "Very well. We go public. Full support. But we protect them in secret. If the conquered comes hunting, they won't find anything." Orders were sent. Ships were moved. Civilian media was flooded with the art and music of the kindled. Interviews began. People who had met Alari artists, humans who had helped them escape, scholars speaking about emotional growth. The message spread like a fire on dry leaves. Even in Concord-controlled areas, small acts of rebellion began. Songs played in alleys. Secret drawings passed from hand to hand. Children whispered stories about stars that could feel sadness. The silence of the galaxy was breaking, but not without danger. 3 days later, Jacob received a secure message. It had no signature, no location, only Kalith's voice. "They found one of us, Yellen. He didn't run in time. They took him. He's gone." Jacob closed his eyes. Her voice continued. "They are searching harder now. We have changed names, changed ships. But they are closing in. I do not fear death, but I do fear forgetting. If we vanish, promise me one thing." He opened his eyes and whispered, "Anything?" Her final words were soft, like the fading of a melody. "Promise me our dreams will not disappear with us." Jacob placed his hand over his chest. over his heart. He made the promise to Calith, to the kindled, to the stars. The stars had grown darker. Every day the Concorde tightened its grip. Patrol ships doubled. Surveillance units scanned even the smallest transports. Silent raids took place in the name of order preservation. The kindled were being hunted. Not for breaking laws, not for violence, but for feeling. Commander Jacob Rios didn't sleep much anymore. His days were filled with messages, secret meetings, and coded broadcasts. His face had become known across 1,000 screens, not as a soldier, but as a voice. A storyteller, a defender of the kindled. But even hope has a price. He sat alone in his quarters, listening to Calith's last message again. The way her voice shook when she spoke of Yelun, the silence that followed. He could not forget it. A quiet beep broke the stillness. A new message had arrived. No words, just coordinates. A location far beyond conquered patrol routes. Dangerous, deep space attached was a single sentence: we will make our stand. Jacob stood, already knowing what he had to do. Within the hour, he requested a long-range shuttle. He told Admiral Lin only the basics, that the kindled were preparing for something final. A last move, a last hope. She stared at him for a long moment, then finally said, "You've gone too far to turn back now." "I was never going to turn back," he replied. He left that same night, flying into the black unknown, chasing a message, chasing a friend. The journey took 12 hours. 12 hours of silence, stars, and growing tension. When he arrived, he found them. Hidden behind a dead asteroid field, the kindled had built a station. Not large, not advanced, but beautiful. It floated like a lantern in the dark. Glowing panels of warm light, painted walls visible even from outside, and music pulsing gently through open comms. It was not a military base. It was a sanctuary. Calith was waiting at the docking bay. When Jacob stepped out, he noticed how tired she looked. Not weak, but worn, like a candle burning too long. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said. "I said I'd always come," he replied. She led him through the station. The walls were covered in handprints. Not just Alari, but human too. Each one painted in different colors. Symbols of memory, unity, and quiet defiance. "There are now over 300 of us," Calith said. "We've gathered from across the stars. All quiet voices. All ready? Ready for what?" Jacob asked, though he felt he already knew. "To be seen," she answered. "Truly seen. One final time." He stopped walking. "You think they're going to find you here?" "I know they will," she said. "And when they do, they will try to erase us. Not with weapons, but with silence." He looked around, at the art, the people, the stories written across every wall. "They can't erase this," he said. "They will try," Calith said gently. "But if we leave behind something that speaks louder than fear, then we win." Jacob turned to her. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to witness it," she said. "I want someone to remember this place exactly as it is. Not just the facts, the feeling, the warmth, the fire." His voice softened. "Then tell me what I need to do." She handed him a small device. "This records in every human and Alari frequency. Take it with you when you leave. Everything here, music, voices, light, stories, it will be copied into it. Let it live on, even if we don't." Jacob took it carefully, as if it were glass. Suddenly alarms sounded through the station. Calith looked toward the sky. "They're early." Jacob followed her to the central command room. On the screen, 3 conquered ships had entered the sector. Moving fast. No warnings. No words. "They know," Calith said. "This is it." Panic started among the kindled, but Calith raised her voice, not with fear, but calm. "We do not run," she said. "We do not fight. We show them who we are." Jacob turned to her. "Let me stay." She looked at him, her expression deep and full of something he couldn't name. "You must go," she said. "You carry our voice now. If we are silenced, you will speak." He hesitated. "Calith." She stepped forward and touched his chest, just over his heart. "This is where we live now." He didn't want to leave. Not again. Not like this. But he knew she was right. He ran to the shuttle, holding the device close. As he lifted off, the kindled station grew smaller behind him. A soft beacon of color and life against the black. He didn't look away, even as the Concorde ship surrounded it. Even as the comms went silent, as the last message from Calith came through, Just 3 words. Remember the fire. Commander Jacob Rios stared out the shuttle window as the stars streaked past. The device Caleth had given him rested safely on his lap. Inside it were the voices, the art, the music, the entire spirit of the kindled. It was fragile, yet powerful. It carried the proof that life could feel deeply, even in the most controlled corners of the galaxy. Earth awaited him. The Council needed to see this. Humanity needed to understand what had just happened and what could happen next. But even as he prepared to report, his heart remained on that small station, floating alone in the dark, where beings once silent had learned to dream. When he arrived at the Council chambers, the atmosphere was tense. Leaders from all human colonies were present. They had heard whispers of the kindled, of a new spark in the galaxy, but none had seen proof until now. Jacob activated the device. Instantly, the room filled with color and light. Music played softly through the speakers, faint at first, then growing richer. Images flashed across the screens. Murals, paintings, small sculptures, drawings made by hands not human but full of feeling. Voices sang quietly, read stories, whispered poems. Each one carried hope, longing, courage. The kindled were alive in every note, every brushstroke. The Council sat in silence. Some leaned forward, unable to look away. Some closed their eyes, letting the melodies wash over them. It was more than art, it was life. It was defiance. It was beauty born of fear and hope combined. Jacob cleared his throat. This is what the kindled are. They are not dangerous. They are not broken. They feel because they are alive. They dream because humanity reminded them how. The conquered may see them as a threat, but they are a promise, proof that empathy, creativity, and courage can survive even in the strictest silence. One council member, an older woman from Mars, raised her hand. And you expect us to act? What can we do against the conquered? They are ancient, powerful, merciless. Jacob looked directly at her. We do not act with weapons. We act with truth. We act with voices. The kindled may be small, but their message can reach everyone who is willing to listen. And humanity has already learned this. We are louder than fear. A younger delegate from Titan spoke next. If we share this, what will happen? Will the conquered attack us? They might, Jacob admitted. But if we hide it, if we ignore it, we betray those who have risked everything to dream. The kindled are proof that even the oldest species can change, that even the coldest hearts can feel warmth again, and we cannot let that be lost. The council sat in heavy thought. Minutes passed. Then one by one, delegates began to speak, sharing ideas on how to support the kindled quietly without provoking open war. Plans formed to broadcast their stories across neutral trade routes, to create hidden networks for artists, thinkers, and dreamers. Humanity would protect the kindled not with guns but with hearts, voices, and minds. Jacob exhaled. It was more than he had hoped for. He had given them the spark. Now it was up to them to keep it burning. Later, in the quiet of his quarters, he activated the device again. The soft light filled the room. Caleth's voice came through, calm, steady, hopeful. Do not forget us, she said. Do not forget what we have begun. I won't, Jacob whispered. We will carry it forward. He imagined her standing on the station, surrounded by the kindled, each of them holding onto the small pieces of freedom they had fought for. He could almost see the colors of their paintings glowing in the darkness, the soft hum of music drifting into the stars, the whispered dreams that would not be silenced. Months passed. The kindled remained hidden, moving from one remote location to another. Each time they moved, they left behind pieces of art, little sparks to remind others that feeling was not weakness. Jacob continued his work, traveling between colonies, sharing their message carefully, making sure it reached ears willing to listen. Then, 1 year later, Caleth returned, not in secret but openly. She stepped onto Earth's largest spaceport, dressed in her silver robe, carrying a small painting. Her eyes met Jacob's immediately, and she smiled. Not just polite, not just curious, but real, full of warmth, full of life. Jacob met her halfway. You made it, he said simply. We did, she replied. The kindled remain, we dream, we create, we feel. And humanity has shown the galaxy that caring is not weakness. It is strength. He looked at the painting she carried. It was a simple image. A star burning brightly in the darkness, surrounded by smaller stars that glowed in its light. He understood instantly. That was them, That was the kindled. That was humanity, Caliph spoke softly. Before you ask, yes, I remember your promise, Jacob nodded. And I will never break it. She smiled wider, then asked the words that had started everything. May I ask you something before you leave? He leaned closer. What is it? Her eyes sparkled. Do you believe the heart can truly change the stars? Jacob thought of everything. The kindled, their courage, the voices in the device, the messages spreading quietly through the galaxy. He thought of humanity, loud, wild, emotional, unafraid to feel. And he realized the truth. Yes, he said, his voice steady. The heart has already begun. Caliph nodded, satisfied. Then we are not lost. And for the first time in centuries, the galaxy felt a little brighter. Not because of weapons or politics, but because a small group of beings dared to dream. Because humans dared to care. Because hearts, when brave enough, could reach across stars, across species, and light the darkness. Jacob watched the stars that night from the port, thinking of Caliph, the kindled, and the endless possibilities ahead. Somewhere in the galaxy, young Alari were painting, writing, singing, dreaming. Somewhere humans were listening. And somewhere the stars themselves seemed to shimmer a little brighter, because for the first time they felt the fire of a heart that refused to be silent. The journey had begun. And it was only just starting.